this information leads to. Throughout this video series, I'll use the opportunity to include links to various YouTube videos that demonstrate something I'm referring to. Now, I urge you to watch all these videos all the way through first, and then go back and check out the other videos, the other YouTube videos, that is. These are generally not my videos, but those of people who are sharing information I think you'll find useful. Including them in this series is not necessarily an endorsement of the person, just a recommendation to check out the video. There are some good people with some very informative YouTube channels though, and I'll point you to them with a recommendation. If you haven't seen it yet, check out this Zeitgeist video. It's a great explanation of how we got into the current situation that we're in. I'm sure you're aware of the origins of today's money, but we'll do a quick history lesson because it really comes to the core of the situation that we're in today. Thousands of years ago, when people were bartering items so that they could trade what they had for what they wanted, it had been discovered that there was quite a lot more silver to be found in the earth than gold, around 10 times more. So while silver was precious, gold was seen as representing more value. People started to use silver as coinage first, and then gold followed for more significant payments. This system worked pretty well, apart from the fact that you had to keep carrying gold everywhere in order to make the transactions. Not everybody wanted to have their gold stored in their home, and so began the practice of storing people's gold for them, for a small fee of course. And these were the early banks as we know them today. Fairly quickly, people realized that just having a piece of paper that said they had gold in the bank was almost as good as actually having the gold, and so the practice of trading using these pieces of paper, or money, was adopted. At this point, at any time, you could take a note promising to pay the bearer to the bank and exchange it for the physical gold that it represented. Coins were also minted that were made of gold and silver and represented that same value, but there reached a point where the material value of the coin's weight in gold or silver became higher than its market value, and so different metals and alloys were introduced and substituted in the minting process. So we see that a silver coin's face value does not always correspond to the true inherited value given by its purity and weight. In fact, it could be higher or lower depending on several criteria, and we'll cover that a bit later. It may surprise you to hear that many people still believe that this is how money works today. The sad truth of the matter is that those days are long behind us, and there is no amount of gold that could ever be swapped for the entire amount of money that now exists. In principle, this is how things worked, but in reality, at some point between when banking began and recent times, money was created for which there was no gold to represent it. These fiat currencies are the reason why you constantly see prices of the things you need to live constantly rising. Your fuel prices rising, your shopping rising, and the explanation that you're given on the news is always inflation, or some generic thing which just means it's not something you can do anything about, it's the economy, so just grin and bear it. In actuality, banks are constantly printing more and more money to pay debts, to pay for wars, and to pay for things which they're saying get funded from your taxes. So it's the value that you create that they're using. Every new dollar bill that they print from nowhere devalues the one in your pocket. They're stealing your money to pay for things which you often have no interest in paying for, but you don't get a say. Actually, the banking system has gone way further than just this simple change, and much of the world's value is now represented as debt rather than physical assets. The world now runs on debt, and people have been trained to consider massive debt as a normal way of things. Newly married couples now tend to want their first home to be fully equipped with all the latest modern conveniences, and they're happy to use debt to get it. If you borrow, say, $10,000 from your bank, that debt is considered an asset, and they're able to lend 10 times more than you borrowed based on it. In a way, it's a little like when you join a gym. Their facility may only support 50 members at any one time, but as long as you don't all go in at the same time, they can take money from 500 people and only need to supply 50 at a time. The money that you owe the bank is used to lend other people, and that money allows more to be borrowed. I know this sounds crazy, but if everyone who was owed money asks for it back today, well, there's not enough money in existence to make all the payments. In fact, at the time that I'm recording this, the American government owes so much debt that every family in America effectively owes $160,000. Of course, this seems ridiculous and you wouldn't imagine it's possible. But that's just one of the crazy things about the situation right now that you'll realize supports the position that silver makes a good investment. In 2009 there was a massive financial collapse where lenders had been giving money to people who could never afford to pay it back. The end result was that government bailouts were used to keep these lenders in business. Now, for most businesses, irresponsible trading will result in bankruptcy and failure of the business, and that should technically be what happened to these big institutions. But because the economies of the world are so closely linked to them, it was decided by the politicians to bail them out. The money used to bail them out has been coming from many places and is now part of the country's overall debt. At some level, much of the money in circulation is tied to gold reserves as it was in the old days. But as part of the desperate measures to control the world's finances and to stop the complete collapse of the banking system, more notes have been printed and put into circulation. As with everything else, the more of something there is, the less it's worth. The more money that gets printed to pay debts, the less valuable the currency is. We already know that there's more currency than there is supporting value in the form of gold, silver and other precious commodities. So where does that leave us? The answer is looking like being a crumbling US dollar and a need for a more stable way of representing value. If you watch the news or the markets, you'll see countries getting debts paid back to them in gold. China has been getting more and more interested in gold, telling its citizens to buy gold for their future, and it surpassed the US government in terms of gold purchasing. It seems Mr. Yi, China's chief foreign exchange minister, recognizes that. He essentially said gold is too volatile, the historic returns aren't great, and any gold buying by China would certainly increase gold prices, and we know that silver will follow when these things happen. There are occasional huge variations in silver prices and stocks when big investors like Warren Buffett take action. In 1996, Buffett bought 130 million ounces of silver and later sold it again, so silver prices can change dramatically if you're not paying attention. At the time I'm recording this, in April 2010, the current price of silver is around $17.2 an ounce. Of course, this changes minute by minute throughout the day, so by the time you finish this video, it will definitely be different. I've made a point of creating a list of online resources for you so that you can get access to important data and information just by visiting my site and using it as the portal to get everywhere else to do your silver research. Now that we've looked at the little trip into history and realized that money isn't what it used to be, let's take a closer look at what makes silver special. Here are some more videos which explain the situation of a fiat currency now being in place where real money should be used. They do a great job